If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now, you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753.
Welcome to another episode of Balancing Acts. I'm your host, Linda Hamilton. I'm a CPA, exit planning coach, and systemologist. Today's topic is going to be cybersecurity, something that's so critically important for all small businesses. And I will tell you that every time I go to a training, a conference, and they taught it, I have mixed feelings. I'm fascinated by the subject and at the same time terrified. So we've invited Alex Markovsky, who's an expert and really specializes in all the things we have to do to protect ourselves. I'm so excited to talk to him today. We're fortunate to have him. Alex is the co-founder and chief information security officer of Alpha Ridge. It's the leading cybersecurity firm based in New York City. And with over 2 decades of experience, Alex has spearheaded security for Fortune 500 companies, New York City agencies, and small businesses. A hands-on leader with deep expertise in penetration testing, threat detection, incident response, Alex is committed to safeguarding his clients' digital assets. He's also a passionate advocate for diversity and professional development, frequently sharing his insights through speaking engagements and mentorship within the cybersecurity community. And we're fortunate that he's going to share his insights with us today. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me on today. I'm looking forward to this.
So let's start with getting our audience to, a bit of an understanding about the common cybersecurity threats for small businesses and why are they targeted? Most people think, oh, I'm too small. They're not going to look at me.
Good question. I think to get right to the point, most common types of threats for small businesses come through the most obvious places, which is email. And everybody sort of knows this, but it is by far, I think like over 90% or so of the actual breaches still happen through just regular email. Why small businesses get targeted more and more often is because it's automated. So it's a lot harder to target a large company. They have bigger moats, bigger barriers, bigger defenses. You have to spend a lot of time to do it. And oftentimes they have better ways to deal with you if you do hack them as a hacker. Small businesses don't, right? So if you automate it and you can try to send emails to 1 million small businesses, they're a lot more likely to fall for the emails and get scammed one way or another. So those are by far kind of the most common ways. And then if they get in through email, they'll either try to take information out by installing something like ransomware. Alternatively, they will compromise the email and try to get whatever information they can. Also, they usually like extort people at this point.
Yes. And email is something we've been relying on for so long. It seems such a simple and easy tool that made it, we all communicate that way, that it has become such a threat. So how can they get started with cybersecurity if they have a tight budget, which most small businesses do?
I think that's the $1 million question. So I'm very happy that you asked it up front. I think the way email works now is it's sort of like your front door, right? Where you have a looking glass, you can kind of see and peek through and see who you think it might be. But more or less, everybody kind of walks to that front door eventually. Even if someone leaves a note, they come back or they open the front door, right? Cyber criminals know that. So email's been used forever. It's not going anywhere. People will keep using it. Email is really easy to spoof, meaning I can buy a domain name like Google, right, with a zero, for example, or something that looks just like Google, and have fake emails coming from what looks like Google but is a lookalike domain. It's really inexpensive to do. It's inexpensive to do at scale, and scammers are really, really good at it. So the reason why it's so effective, it's just a numbers game. And kind of the budget question on what you can do about it is depending on which email provider you use. If it's Microsoft 365, you can increase the spam protections on it pretty much to the maximal level that Microsoft 365 allows, or ask your IT company to do so for you. And if you're using Google's G Suites or Google Workforce platforms, you can pretty much do the exact same thing by limiting what's allowed through and maximizing your spam filter threshold, so only things that don't look like spam get through. To take it one last step further, you should probably get some sort of, or have your IT company make sure you have some sort of spam phishing and phishing simulation training, meaning it blocks emails from going in that have any suspected malware in them. You open them in what looks like a sandbox. It looks just like Gmail or just like Microsoft 365. And if there's something there, it gets opened securely. So, but those are kind of the minimum entry points for protecting email.
Let's give them a little more background on phishing. What does phishing mean?
Phishing is really kind of what it sounds like. So it's phishing with a PH instead of with an F, but you're really kind of throwing out something and some sort of bait, and you're hoping that somebody catches it. So fundamentally, it's exactly like phishing. You're trying to hook someone in any way possible. You remember the Nigerian scams from, going back to like 80s and 90s.
I do remember.
Everybody remembers. They haven't gone away. They've gotten better, and they're called pig butchering scams now. And I guess they work in the same way. People can reach out pretending to be who they're not. They get a hook in you, either romantically or financially, and then they try to basically game it and extort you for money. So phishing over email is the exact same thing. They send an email, looks pretty, like it's from Microsoft or Netflix or somebody that you know and trust. And because it's sent to like 1 million people at the same time, one of those people have recently changed a Netflix account or a Chase account. And it's a numbers game, right? So they're just waiting for the person that remembers, hey, they just changed that yesterday. Maybe I should click it. Seems like it would be legitimate. In reality, it's a link that would take you to a website that would either download something if you don't have good antivirus, which is why it's critical to have good antivirus. Some of the best ones are SentinelOne, and I used to say CrowdStrike, but less so after CrowdStrike caused kind of the largest IT outage in history. But good antivirus is kind of critical in case you do open the emails, right? So it doesn't download and install something that is bad. But that's the long-winded answer to phishing.
Yeah, okay. And I want people to know that we're going to talk about things you can do to protect yourself as well throughout this show. So make sure you tune into all 4 segments. But let's talk about any maybe free resources that they can help them either learn about cybersecurity and some of these things you're talking about, or improve their cybersecurity in their own small business.
It's a really good question. The government invests in this quite a bit, actually, luckily. So the SANS, SANS Institute is probably like the largest US body that provides these foundations, including free tools and frameworks that you can look at without having any real depth of knowledge on IT or cybersecurity. And as a starting point, they really help you outline where your attention should be. CISA, C-I-S-A, I think CISA.gov possibly, is also another one. It is the government's cybersecurity arm that puts out everything from like self-assessments that you can take on yourself as a company, just, a basic checklist of these 8 things. Do we do it? Kind of all the way through. And they all provide some version of free tools, some for doing free vulnerability scans of your network, some for just like a health check on best practices, like do you have MFA turned on? And it's a really good place to start because it's already been vetted by, subject matter experts for all businesses.
Yeah. And so MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication, which I use pretty much for everything, my personal accounts, my business accounts, whether it's Amazon. It can be annoying having to stop and get a code. But why don't we just talk a little bit about that tool in specific for how easy is that for most business owners to use to protect themselves, and how deep should they use it?
So I'm going to go back to that front door analogy. Same as email. It's not how much of a pain in the butt it is. It's almost saying like, how much of a pain in the butt is the lock on your door? Well, yes, it shouldn't be something that takes a retina scan, a fingerprint, and your temperature check and the rest. It's too much, but it needs to be really heavy duty, right? And it needs to be something that's secure so only you can open it, or you. And I mean, in cybersecurity, actually just you. There's no you and a key with a friend type of scenario. It's just you. So to answer your question on MFA, I think it's mission critical because it's the lock across all the doors, right? It is important to do MFA the right way, which is not via text message. Ideally, it's with an authenticator app. It's really straightforward. If you have an iPhone, you can use your face to identify and make it a little more automated and easy. So you just press the button, put your face there. It does the MFA for you for many apps that everybody uses. Kind of like you can log in with your bank account to MFA. But I would say, since you brought it up, Susan, it's the number one most important thing. So think of any work accounts, business accounts, and personal accounts have sensitive or financial info, bank and the rest, insurance, and double check that they have MFA. No IT company will really do this for you across everything because they won't touch your personal accounts, right? And they're always related. It's kind of the one most important thing to do. So like you said, you do it all the time. I'm glad you do this. And it's something you should continue doing and telling all your employees to do.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, you can use getting a code to your phone, but the preferred method, or I guess you're saying is the better method, is to use an authenticator app on your phone. We're going to take a commercial break in a moment and come back. What we've talked about so far about the, why there's threats to small businesses, some of the types of threats. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some essential cybersecurity practices, things you can do and steps you can take to protect yourself, your customers, and your employees. We'll come back in a moment.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations that you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753.
Taking a trip in the next 12 months? Airlines are under tremendous pressure and they're practically giving away their unsold seats. Like every crisis, this one will end too. But right now is the best time to take advantage of giveaway ticket prices on their unsold seats. We're not allowed to publish these low fares online. The only way to get these rock bottom giveaway prices is to call. So phone low-cost airlines now for airline ticket prices you may never see again.
Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We're talking with Alex Margovsky, who is the founder and co-founder and chief information security officer of Alpha Ridge in New York City, a leading cybersecurity firm. Alex, we just had a good conversation about some of the types of risks and why small businesses are targeted. Let's talk about how we secure customer data, because that's one of the most important things from my perspective. We all have customers. And when you talk about disasters in general, there can be floods, there can be all kinds of different, hurricanes. Disasters can put a small business out of business, and having a cybersecurity attack is another type of disaster that can really do harm to you. So, what types of customer data is at risk during a cyber attack?
I keep saying good questions, but they really are. So the reason this one is a good question, right? You always want to know, ask the why, is it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're touching payments, right? Like financial information of any customers, that intrinsically has a value to the customers, to you, and to really anybody else that could benefit from having that financial information. Same with other sensitive information types. It varies by industry, right? So each industry has their own sensitivity labels. But what's most important is, and this is kind of the foundation of cybersecurity, is identifying what's important to you. Like you said, Linda, customer data is important to everyone. If you're healthcare, it's your patient data. That's the most important and most valuable to hackers as well. If you're in law, it would be probably like court documents and really anything that's non-publicly disclosed information. If you are in any other industry, it's what's called PII. So there's kind of two buckets really quick. One is consumer data, meaning if you sell ice cream, you do retail, you sell shoes, you're Amazon, you sell online to individuals, you're collecting a lot of individual information. You're a hospital, you're serving individual patients, not like organizations. You have a requirement if there's a breach of a certain amount of users. It varies by state. It's usually above 100 people where you have to report it. And the type of data matters. So if it's identifiable, meaning like a driver's license with a photo ID and a bank info and something else, right? A credit card. So stuff that can actually be used together. You're required to do it. As a business, it's much more lax, but just as important because you're sort of like the key holder. If you do business to business, which many small companies do, your requirement to store your customer data is even higher, but you don't have to disclose if there's a breach. It usually gets handled privately. And the reason why protecting that customer data is most important is it's always the lifeblood of your business. The question is, how do you categorize it to what's most important? You can't protect everything all the time. That's exhausting. It's a balance there. And then what do you do to actually make sure that the customer's data is protected along the best practices of the industry? And those are kind of like the main focus points. And to start with that, you have to know what's most sensitive. If you process credit cards, your credit card processing company will make you do PCI compliance. So you're kind of covered on that. If you have cyber insurance, they'll make you do what's required as well. And there are kind of a lot of these types of checks and balances that help ensure you protect customer data.
And your customers, customers may also get upset with you if you're breached, and it may not be your fault. There's not always, there's a lot of attacks on, we hear about governments all the time, right? There's tons of risk out there, but doing your best to protect your customer data. And I think, as you're saying, I want to remind people that data might be a credit card. You take credit cards. You mentioned PCI compliance. I know not everyone knows what that is, or they know what it is and they haven't really taken the steps to make sure they are compliant. And that means you sell your goods and services and you accept credit cards. You have to make sure you have a system, the proper accounting system or the proper CRM system where you have this information protected the way it's supposed to be. So I'm glad you raised that. So what happens, the worst happens and they have a breach, and a breach means what? That someone's gotten access to this data. What's the first step they take?
Good questions. Again, the first thing that happens if it's a real breach, it's usually email or files. And I would say breaches fall in kind of really three categories, and I'll explain what the company does when it's their breach. So there's external breaches you can't do anything about. These happen all the time, right? You hear LinkedIn got breached, Netflix got breached. These are the ones you read about in the newspaper. Can't do anything about those. If directly, because they affect everyone, if it directly impacts your clients, you should probably figure out a way to communicate about that to the clients impacted and either switch out the tool or make recommendations on what you and they should do based on what that company recommends. If it is something that was more likely than not, something you have to deal with, which is your breach, they got in your email or got in your files. Email is more common these days by a long shot because a lot of people don't have multi-factor authentication and they reuse passwords. So it's really easy to automate just checking email addresses that people have publicly out there, company email addresses against known passwords and breaches. So if my email account, alexmargoski, at gmail.com got breached a long time ago, and I reused the password, 5 years later on something else, and I used a version of first name, last name in it, very likely that can get automatically taken over if I don't have MFA. So emails work the same way. Email gets breached all the time. Depending on what's in the email is what you have to do. But if you have very sensitive client information that you don't want clients to be aware of, or like if they're, if it would put them at risk and you at risk, you actually have requirement to let them know that you may be impacted and that they may be impacted. It'll serve you from a trust perspective much better long term. Usually most companies themselves are not the reason or the ones that were the cause of a breach. It's something that wasn't set up properly by a third party, an IT company, another vendor, and kind of down the list. So the first thing you should do to answer the question in a very, very roundabout way is you need to reach out to whoever the subject matter expert is that either does your IT or your cybersecurity. If you have a cyber insurance policy, which really any business above $1 million, I would say, in revenue needs to have, just kind of like you have a lock on your front door. And they would have specific protocols, meaning they have an incident response plan you have to follow. They probably bring in their own legal person to just assess the situation. Then you get expert advice right away, which is sort of why you pay for it. Same as, excuse me, if there's a car accident, you're not going to want to figure out what to do next yourself, right? You call the insurance company and they tell you exactly what to do. They get the lawyer, they get the car shops, they get A, B, C, D, right?
Yeah, and that's a good analogy to say, if you have a car insurance, who's the expert you should contact? Let's so the first step is figuring out who you should contact, who's the expert you should talk to, and then follow their advice. But what if it's affecting your own files, right? What is disaster recovery, and how can that be important to a small business?
So what we talked about before was a little bit more along the lines of incident response. Incident response is exactly as it sounds. How do you respond to the incident as it happens, right?
Right.
Like calling the insurance company. Disaster recovery is what you do to get back up to being operational, or at least to like a performance level of operation. And really, disaster recovery, everybody has to have a plan. They're available in the SANS Institute, available in CISA. They're usually right-sized to the type of organization that you are, so it's not overkill. It's not for a corporation, for a small business. In almost every case, they have to do with a few small fundamental things. It's having backups, right? And having backups that are separated and tested across anywhere where the data is important. The most important thing to you, usually as a business, is to not lose the data. If you lose the data, it's really hard to go back to a client later and say, excuse me, I do this for you in this service, but I have no idea, no history of it because I lost it all. There's some hacker deleted it, right? It's a lot easier to come back from a breach. So back up emails and back up your files and back up any line of business system that you use. If you're in healthcare, it's an electronic health record system. If you're in accounting, it's your accounting platform, real estate, and so on. Architecture, it's CAD. And it doesn't matter what it is, whatever the core work platform, ERP that you use, you should try to back it up.
Yeah, you think in disaster recovery, like if you had a flood or, there have been, building collapses, and if your records are gone and you have a backup, that's why you're out of business. Or you might have Trevor and recover part of it, but maybe you can't get back to operational, which means your revenue will stop. So that is why that is important.
And in 2024, honestly, because so much of it has been digitized, or it's available to be digital, even if you have a server, you can still do a really inexpensive, under $100 a month, like very dirt cheap, some sort of cloud backup that's automatically tested. It's just like the other side of an insurance policy that to not do it's almost too cheap. Or same with email backup. You can do like $1 a mailbox type service. There are quite a few of them, like Dropsuite, that backs up all your emails. So if somebody gets in like a hacker and deletes it from Microsoft or Google, your disaster recovery plan, even if there's no IT company, is to go to that third-party service that has nothing to do with Microsoft or Google and to say, I need the email recovered from a year ago back 10 years. And they will pull all that stuff for you. So like for like $1 a month a mailbox or cheap cloud backup server or cloud service, I would assume most businesses with IT companies have that in place. If not, that's kind of like the disaster recovery mandate.
I've never heard of Alex. I have never even considered backing up email. There's all these things we all think when we're in QuickBooks Online or, other online platforms, that's essentially the backup, or using Microsoft 65 or Google, that's essentially the backup. And what you're talking about is something different that I think our listeners should actually investigate quickly, as you said, especially if it's low cost. But that is not something I've ever heard mentioned before. So thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk some more about some essential practices, balancing convenience and security and other matters. And thank you, Alex, for sharing your wisdom with us. So we'll come back in a moment.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now. Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We're having a great conversation with Alex Markowski, the founder and Chief Information Security Officer of Alpha Ridge, a leading cybersecurity firm in New York City. Alex, let's talk about, we talked about in the first segment why small businesses are a target. We talked about protecting data. We talked about some of the types of attacks that happen. But let's talk about some practical examples that you've seen and what businesses can do. Where would you like to start with some examples you want to share?
Okay, I'm going to cheat and use the last thing we talked about before commercial break. This makes it easier for myself. But so the most common and the most obvious things that should be done but are never done are testing backups. And it doesn't matter if you do it for yourself or if you have a large company or an IT company or a small company. Really doesn't matter what the scenario is. Just like if you drive a car, you need insurance to make it legal. That's the equivalent to operating a business from an IT perspective, as you have to have tested backups. So where this comes into play is what we see a lot, unfortunately, and like I said, not by choice, is companies have backups, good backups. They're paying for backups, and I see a ton of businesses that have IT companies that have it on their monthly invoice and have cloud backups that are like offsite and all the other things that you would think could have covered your butt. But in reality, for whatever reason, again, reasons don't matter here. Results are the only thing that matters, is the test, right? A backup test. Either the IT company after a breach, and this has happened at least on like 3 or 4 occasions, maybe even in the last year, that I can count on, where the IT company has contributed to wiping out the data, either from not testing a backup, not having the right backup, overwriting with the wrong backup. Twice, data was written, like two years of medical patient records, billing records, insurance records, and we'd had to do discovery on I believe like a total of a $5 million claim that the cybersecurity insurance company of that IT provider had to pay out because they literally overwrote the data and it was unrecoverable as patient data, right? And they charged CMS, Medicare, Medicaid, so they had to find ways to kind of attribute and do it. And everybody thought they were doing things right. Everybody thought they had backups, right? Everybody was big companies, big IT company, large healthcare provider, billing provider, and nobody tested the backups. So they were overwritten with old wrong backups. Nobody knew. It didn't have to happen that way, really, just for like a common reason. So I would say that the most important thing to actually do, that everybody should do, like a license to operate, is to test backups. And then,
even if you don't understand what that is, as a small business, just having the word test in my mind, saying I have to go to my IT or whoever's doing it and say, are you testing, or can you prove you're testing?
You have to actually ask for exactly that, not not verbally, you have to put it in an email, because if something happens, right, and it hits the fan, you're not the one that has to cover your butt explaining that, oh, well, A, B, and C I assumed because of my contract, because of my invoice, because of this. No, you sent an email that said, is it tested? You get an answer pretty quick, right? If your answer is anything but a yes with proof of the test, not like a maybe, but next time, but last year, but fill in the blank, right? There is no answer but yes. And here's the screenshot, or here's the date, so and so. It's a straightforward process, and that's why the backups exist. If you can't answer that question for yourself, the same goes. If you're sort of like, yes, I think it's backed up because it's in Google, so hence Google has to back it up. Well, they really don't. And if you get locked out of your account, where's all that email going to go, right? So there's lots and lots of. So that's basically it.
That's interesting. And I just would add one other thing, whether it's whether you're thinking cybersecurity or not, but testing backups. Think about all these businesses. You have accounting data, you have financial data, you have tax data, you have receipts, everything's online. If you lost your information through cybersecurity or some other disaster, and you can't prove your expenses and things to the IRS, you could have problem even with a tax audit. So that's like, to me, that's a light bulb going off that says it's important to your business all around when you rely on everything that's on a computer, whether it's in the cloud or locally. Thank you for that. So what about another example that you would like businesses to be aware of that really illustrates the importance of cybersecurity?
So for this, I kind of wanted to address something pretty specific. I don't know of a single company that doesn't know another business or work with someone that's been hacked. And obviously, like, I'm in this industry, so I'm probably along the more biased side of that spectrum. But in any of the owners of other participating business cohorts that I'm in or across the board, it's like this topic that is sort of hush hush, because there's a bit of a stigma of, hey, I'm not a good business owner, or I'm not a good business operator, or I'm not a good executive, or I'm not a good manager. I'm not a good anything employee. There's no the level up or down the food chain where you're like, okay, I'm good, but I got hacked. And then, pretend like you don't feel the social responsibility of accountability for that and addressing it. And it is the equivalent of literally like tripping up and scraping your knee. So there should be it shouldn't be like a shameful act or something that people are worried about, the public opinion. Yes, public opinion matters, of course, especially companies' public opinion. It's your reputation. But the frequency and the level of underreporting on it is just, it's like a real iceberg scenario where you see just a sliver of a few percent. And in reality, most companies, most individuals have been victim to some sort of cyber exploit or breach directly, not just like a third party. And the reason why I'm kind of stating this is the methods themselves are really, really common, and it's all over. Whether it's email, like the most common one that I said, or buying, gift cards at any place that somebody asks you or tricks you into buying gift cards. They kind of almost always follow the same pattern across the type of scams. Linda, I talked to you about this in pretty good detail when I stopped over. It's really anything that follows a sense of urgency. It is anything that kind of screams at you, act now, do this, to basically distract you. Anything that feigns credibility. All that stuff that is like mental tricks, stuff that comes into your text as on a phone or a text message repeatedly at 2 or 3 in the morning from numbers you don't know, right? These things happen because criminals try to catch you off guard. They try to make it time sensitive so you can't focus enough to discern that the thing that they're trying to get you to do is a high risk thing you shouldn't be doing. And the list goes on. So it's a very long-winded answer again to why everybody should be sort of watching across all of the methods that people reach out to. Social media, text message, email, go down the list. You're on Instagram, somebody reaches out to you on Instagram that you don't know and asks you for your banking details. Would you give it to them? No way, right? If they try to get in to become a friend and then in a week later they ask you your banking details, same applies. Just be kind of aware and cognizant of the most frequent facets and the signals of like urgency, confidence schemes. Really, anytime somebody is trying to get extra information that you normally wouldn't be giving out in a public domain.
Wow. And you know that you're almost saying, you know, we almost have to be suspicious,
You
keep
do.
a certain level, a heightened awareness for things. You're right, that come in and look real. So you know you're tempted to respond, or you know without for a moment you think, oh, I'm going to respond, and you say, wait, stop. So you know, and there's that trust but verify, right, as well before you respond to anything, and don't do it by clicking on the email.
Don't sit on it is the other side of it. So when something happens, kind of the flip side, why I kept it as such a general answer is it can happen 100 different ways, and it happens to everybody, but it's the frequency of like tripping and scraping a knee, right? Once a year, everybody, if not this year, the next year, if not, you know, once a month. Some people get hacked really frequently because they get retargeted because they paid out once. Don't respond to cyber criminals if you can, because it puts a target on your back. You become basically you enter a type of database, whether it's with a one entity that does it or multiple, and they know they can extract money from you, then they basically will throw the kitchen sink at you and see what works until they get every penny.
So everybody's information is out there, right? I mean, there've been so many breaches that of large companies. Some of them are just databases we didn't even sign up with, and their stuff where they collected our data. So is that something we have to worry about, that when or what should we do to you know, is there software to protect us? What about our antivirus software? What are some of the things we can do?
Good, it's a good question. That is actually how most of the breaches work. You nailed it, because most of them come from passwords, credentials that criminals got from another company that got hacked. The password was, for example, reused. So Netflix gets hacked, LinkedIn gets hacked. All those passwords that you used back then, they're out there, right? And a hacker can test any permutation of that password. So if you think, you know, you're clever and you use abracadabra, you know, accounting app 1, abracadabra, accounting app 12, abracadabra this. It's really, really like trivial at this point in 2024 to automatically scan every version of it, combined with like word generators and get in and crack passwords. And once people pay, again, it's like a very natural motivation for someone to do it. So you asked the question of what can you do about it? There are breaches all the time that happen. The number one thing you can do about it is do not reuse passwords, just period. Don't use passwords that you can think of or remember. If you do, make them unique and complex enough every time. Length is important more than anything, really. It's length. And multi-factor authentication and password managers. That's kind of an unspoken rule between businesses. Linda, I know you're a practitioner of this, and your company uses it, but it's important that if your business does not use any type of password manager, you either talk to your IT company about it or look into a few of the ones out there. 1Password, Keeper, LastPass are the most common. Yes, like a few of them have had security events of their own historically, including LastPass. But using a password manager is the equivalent of having a good keychain, right? At the end of the day, if every one of your keys to your house is like in a different pocket or around, you know, the sink, or one in the office, one in the car, you're never going to get to what you need. You can't have them on Post-it notes. I'm going to actually talk about this for 10 seconds. Then I'll
I'm going to bring us back to this when we come back from our commercial break, and then we'll kind of close that up on those things.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
Taking a trip in the next 12 months? Airlines are under tremendous pressure and they're practically giving away their unsold seats. Like every crisis, this one will end too. But right now is the best time to take advantage of giveaway ticket prices on their unsold seats. We're not allowed to publish these low fares online. The only way to get these rock bottom giveaway prices is to call. So phone low-cost airlines now for airline ticket prices you may never see again.
Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We're talking with Alex Markovsky, the founder of Alpha Ridge, a leading cybersecurity firm in New York City. Alex, we were just talking about password management, protecting passwords in our last segment. Why don't you close that up for us and really summarize what you want small businesses to know about how they use passwords, manage their passwords, protect their passwords.
Great. I think, you nailed it with saying password manager when we talked about this earlier. Really, the key is don't write them down anywhere. Not Notepad, not your phone, not a document on your computer, not an email that you send back and forth, not a Google Sheets document. I can't name the ways. If it is digital and you typed it and it's not in a password manager, somebody can access it and get access to everything. Please don't do that. That's kind of it in a nutshell. On top of that, the other foundational thing about passwords in cybersecurity is it's all layered, right? So the first layer is just your door. Having a password is kind of like just the easy lock. Multi-factor is the deadbolt. You can't have a lack of a deadbolt on something that's really important. So if it's got storing money, storing critical client data, make sure you have some form of MFA on it. The better way is to make sure you use an authenticator app. Microsoft's Authenticator is free. Google's Authenticator app is free. MFA is free to set up on almost any device, any service. You should also look into cybersecurity awareness training. Sort of a prerequisite these days. If your IT company or cyber company isn't doing it, there's tons of resources online. You can check out our website at alpharidge.com. We can point you in the right direction or help out as well. There's also backups, which I talked about briefly in the last segment. Make sure that whoever is protecting your data, whether it's you yourself, then you know where the backups are and you tried using them. And if not, then you ask the IT company to test the backups. And then the last thing is you should have a plan. So whether somebody else makes it for you, you get it from the SANS Institute, you get a really good template and you try it one time, run through it, have a plan, try it out. At a minimum, kind of doing those very, very core things will help protect you and go really the long way. You should also always have antivirus, which you mentioned before, probably a good one if possible. And then, those are really, really kind of like the core minimum things that help balance affordability, because it's a slippery slope, right? When you start spending on IT and cybersecurity with the precautions that are best practices across every single industry. If you do those things at kind of the start, you build from there, and then
And
you cover
that's
more. Yeah.
is a balancing acts is about balancing all things in business and not just your books, but the when it comes to cybersecurity and other things, business owners don't always buy as much insurance maybe as they need because they're balancing the cost with protecting themselves. And so that, I think the struggle with IT is you're balancing your costs with your security. And then there's that convenience factor as well. Oh, it's annoying to have all these things. It's going to take me 30 seconds more to put in the password. So can you talk a bit about balancing the cost and the security and balancing the convenience?
Absolutely.
Or learning to live with it even.
So you nailed it. In some cases, if it's MFA, it's probably more learning to live with it. But there's a healthy balance. If you set it up to use facial recognition with your phone in one of the main authenticator apps, like any of the free ones from Microsoft or Google, it's a prerequisite. You have to do it, but it's so much easier because you kind of do it. You look up, okay, it's done, right? You're not entering codes, wasting time, getting emails and doing that.
And you
likewise,
just download the multi-factor on your phone. It's an app, right? You put it on your phone. It's super easy to use.
Everybody can go directly to Microsoft or download Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator. They're the two main ones. It lists all your codes in a row. You can use facial recognition to open it and automatically authenticate it. So things that normally take like 4 or 5 steps and become the bane of existence for everybody that has to use it, are at least simplified. So those are that's the low-hanging fruit and also the insider tip for using MFA. Try to set it up with some form of facial recognition so you're not tired of doing it. You actually use it across anything that stores critical data, finances, and the stuff like legal that you can't really live without. You set it right.
And that's the least expensive way to
that's the only way. You don't want to protect stuff that doesn't matter. There's a ton of businesses that try to protect and back up everything. It gets overly expensive. So it should always be right sized. And you should look and see, what do I actually need? Figure it out for yourself first. That's what I need to protect. That's what I need to back up. The rest of it, much less relevant and not a headache for you to worry about.
So you mentioned training. So, some of our listeners don't have any employees, but they probably could take some training themselves. Some have a small team because when you're talking about email, everybody's employees use email. Everybody's. So even your contractors and people who don't have employees, who have independent contractors, put them in their own email, because maybe they're just so how critical is it to actually maybe once a year? How often should they do a training? Even just a reminder, right? These threats change constantly.
I'm biased, obviously, and you know that. Outside of the bias, and subjectivity, it's pretty critical. Doesn't matter how, I would say, the frequency, if it's only less, a year or so at least. It doesn't matter, other conditions around it. That not doing very basic training means that it's just a matter of time until somebody, especially an employee or somebody else, will get breached. And very minimal baseline training of, hey, look for this every time, use a tool to help stop it and prevent it, so it catches it and opens it in a safe place for you in case you make a mistake, because every human will make a mistake, just a matter of when. And really kind of make sure that everybody is on the same page. A new contractor, a new employee, give them 15 minutes, 30 minutes, give them some documentation on, here's our company policy about this sort of thing. Even if you don't have one, make one or get one. There's a ton of free resources for this type of thing, and then just make them follow it. It will serve you a very, very far long way, an advanced step of saying, this is a policy, we don't do these things, versus kind of remediating it after the fact.
Right. And so I will tell you that one mistake I made, I got a new phone at one point and didn't realize that when I wiped it, I had to start over setting up all the multi-factor authentication. So you have to back that up too.
You're right. I'm gonna give you one more thing. We were talking before about future trends, right? And especially email and phishing and all that stuff, and kind of like what to potentially be on the lookout for. I have a friend that runs and owns a pretty large, sizable influencer marketing company, and they have, if very effectively using AI automation, got nailed email generation for the first 3 to 5 conversations with customers. I mean, perfect response back and forth. So I can tell you that if a company that does this, it's not a government, right? Not multi-billion-dollar corporation or anything like that, has resources to do something like that, that's what you can expect. That all the stuff that's publicly available now, it's not people doing it, it just happens at scale, can get really good and conversational. So kind of like you said, don't live in a state of paranoia. You don't want to do that. You don't want to impact your quality of life. Just have your BS meter set to 10. Just that, right? Very healthy, high level of skepticism, because anything you put on LinkedIn is fed into any single AI that anybody wants to feed it in. So your podcast, my writing, anybody's info that's out there, right? That sounds convincing that somebody follows you is really just a bot that's cleverly crafting it to talk to you back and forth. So that would be kind of the future that I would say. Have in mind that somebody that talks like they know you may not.
So the AI is really, that's, as much as it's been really incredible helping small businesses, kind of do more with less, it lowered their costs in lots of ways. But there are these new threats that we're not aware of. And I heard a story recently about someone who used, I called it a deep fake, but it was a video or an audio of this person asking for money or cybersecurity. So would you just, we don't have a lot of time left, but just some brief things to be careful of on that AI front if you get audio or video from someone.
I'm glad you brought that up. I should have brought that up too. So I think the one you're talking about is actually a pretty famous case now. Is a CFO that gets duped, basically a CFO and CEO that are talking, and it's the CFO that's deep faked and looks legit, and then I guess the transaction gets authorized. It's a really high bar to clear, to be honest, because the tech's getting really good at emulating people and conversations, especially voice. In 15 seconds, you can clone a voice, and me or you won't discern the difference. Even with perfect pitch, we won't discern the difference. So there's an answer, still an answer. Basically, the test for authenticity and reliability goes up higher. The bar is higher, right? For important things. If somebody asks you, can I transfer, $100 from this account to this? Hey, boss, can I get gift cards for these 5 employees that did a great job last month? The default has to be way high. Absolutely no way, unless I'm holding your hand, you're in front of me. And I know a company where this has actually happened, where the CEO authorized an employee in the office sitting across from them via text, right? And sent gift cards because they didn't validate with that employee, because why would they? They're looking at them in the same office, right? And went out, and somebody went out, not in that office, obviously, and bought gift cards. I was like, wait, how did this happen, right? They got caught, it got stopped, but there's so many ways that these things can happen. The key is just keep the test really high. Don't believe that it is someone unless you have a way to verify. So unless you call their cell phone and say, hey, yes, I will verify this $10,000 transfer you asked me to do to a new bank account that I don't know about. Don't do that over email for the first time.
Right.
Thing, but all of them fall in the same basket.
And we're going to end on that note, and I definitely will have to have you come back. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. How can people find you online, whether it's your social media sites or events you're having, your website?
This is great. We will post more on the website, probably in our blog section. The website is alpharidge.com.
Alpharidge.com?
Yep, ALPHARIDGE.com. So I don't keep a huge social media profile on purpose because of the cybersecurity work, but we will post stuff on the blog more and more often. And then you can always reach out to me and to us there.
Thank you so much. I learned so much more, even though I take cybersecurity classes every year. And I hope for my audience, what I want you to remember is make sure you're not using duplicate passwords. Make sure they're long enough. Use a password manager and set up that multi-factor authentication. We'll see you next week for another episode of Balancing Acts.
That's great. Thank you.
This has been a NowMedia Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free.